Welcome to Starving Artist Courses, your all-in-one online music education resource. I'm Jeremie, the electric guitar teacher. Welcome back to your second guitar lesson. If you missed your first one, go back and watch that one because we're going to kind of build off of our previous lessons. So that one's about the chromatic. This week we're focusing on the major scale. The major scale, everyone knows the major scale. You probably have heard it multiple times in your life, even if you're not a musician. I'm going to play it first, so here it is. I'm sure you recognize that. Let's break down what we're kind of doing first before we kind of just learn it. The guitar, we have, as we learned last week, we have E, A, D, G, B, and E. So you're wondering what those kind of signify, and those are the pitch letters. In music, we have 12 pitches. We have our natural notes, we have our sharp notes, and we have our flat notes. On the guitar, the way it works is that we kind of start with whatever our open string letter is. In this case, it's an E on our top string. And then when we go up to our 12th fret, we see we have these two kind of double dots. It's really important because that's kind of signifying our octave. All the notes fit inside one octave. So we're going to start here. We're going to have E. Then it goes up the alphabet from there. So we go F. Then we have F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C. It's kind of important. C sharp, D, D sharp, and then we're back to E. Once it keeps going, you just kind of repeat through that process. If we were going backwards, it would be the same thing. We would just kind of go backwards through the alphabet, but with those same sharps. And we could also say flats because an F sharp is the same as a G flat. Those we call those enharmonic notes. We just kind of want to know that right now. Once we get into key signatures, that kind of becomes more important, but right now that's not super critical. We just want to know that we have sharps and flats, and that sharps and flat note can be the same note. So the C major scale starts here on C, because that's where we said C was. So we have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. We get that sound because of the spacing between the notes. We call those intervals. So intervals, another really important word for music because pretty much everything you're doing in music is based off intervals. So in the major scale, we have from C to D, we have a whole. From D to E, we have a whole. From E to F, we have a half step. From F to G, we have a whole step. From G to A, we have a whole step. A to B, whole step. And then B to C is a half step. So we got whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Really important to remember that because all scales have that kind of method to them. That's how we kind of know why the major scale sounds different than the minor scale or the natural minor scale or the pentatonic scales because of those intervals. So let's figure out a way we can kind of practice this on guitar to make it a little bit easier. I like to kind of start with matching our fingers with the frets. So if you kind of go back to the second fret here, and we use our second finger on the second fret, fourth finger on the fourth fret, first finger on the first fret, second finger, fourth finger, first finger, third finger, fourth finger, first finger, third finger, fourth finger, second finger, fourth finger, first finger, and second finger. That's going through the scale 2 octaves, and then if we go backwards from that, you're going in reverse, because you always want to play things in reverse when you go forward on music. That's too complicated. Let's go 1 octave. So instead of doing 2 octaves like we just did, let's do 1 octave. So 1 octave would just be second finger on the second fret, fourth finger on the fourth fret, first finger, first fret, second finger, second fret, fourth finger, fourth fret, first finger, first fret, third finger, third fret, and fourth finger, fourth fret. So same idea, you want to go backwards as you go forward. Starting here, we would say this is an F sharp major scale. So that's really important as our starting note. On guitar, the scale's movable. So really you can kind of start wherever you want as long as you're keeping the spacing the same between your fingers. But starting here at the second fret's a good starting spot just so you can get some practice in. You just got to remember 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. And then play it backwards too. You don't want to be the guitar player that just plays scales going forward, doesn't know how to go backwards. Don't be that guy. Your homework for this week is to practice that major scale, up and down. So you can kind of do this however you want. I would say starting with the 2nd fret is probably the easiest way because you can just memorize it that way. And memorizing the shape is really what a lot of guitar players do this. So you can memorize it. Feel free to also try to play it at the different frets. At C is a good one just because C is a really common scale. Or 2 octaves. Make sure you still alternate your picking when you're doing this. It's a little harder when you're doing an asymmetrical scale where the strings are not even. If you're doing 2 sets of 2s and 3s, it gets a little bit harder to alternate your picking, but it's very important to work on the alternate picking when you're playing any kind of scale, any kind of exercise on guitar. It's just good to get in the habit of alternate picking while you're playing. The metronome, you also want to keep that, probably you might want to go a little bit slower with your metronome with the major scale just because it's a little bit more complicated. I would probably set it still around 60, maybe even a little bit slower than that. Feel free to slower is always better, so feel free to set it as slow as you need it to kind of work on getting, same idea here where you're working on getting the notes to connect between each other. You don't want to have that gap. And work on landing your fingers on the right spot on the frets. And that's it. Before I wrap up, make sure you visit starvingartistcourses.com, join our mailing list. We have a free PDF file called Finding Your Rhythm, Making Time for Your Dreams. It's a practice guide that'll give you a whole bunch of tips on practicing. It's really hard to get going at first with music. These will help you immensely on your journey to being the greatest musician that you can become. Make sure you like, subscribe, ding the bell, and we'll see you next time. Bye.